This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 1015 FM. Arnie Sherman, good morning to you.
Scott, how are we?
We're doing very well.
We're doing good? That's good.
I think so.
This string of cold weather here has really perplexed me.
Why is that?
Because it's colder than the North Pole. If I wanted to move to the North Pole, I would have been an explorer.
That's a good point, actually.
Not a law-abiding citizen. Anyway, as we're heading into 2017, besides being cold, Missoula's in pretty good shape.
Without a question.
Our economy's going good. The town is bustling. There are lots of great new additions, on the scene in the restaurant world, in the housing development world, in the real estate world in general, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today with Dawn Maddux, who's a sponsor of our show from Sotheby's real estate company.
Glacier, Sotheby, International Realty.
Yeah, you do that very well.
Thank you.
And when the economy is strong, it translates into strong housing sales. So we're having a pretty strong market. One of the consequences of that we'll discuss with Dawn is the fact that the prices are going up here pretty, steep, in a steep way.
When did that all start, by the way, Arnie?
Well, in 2011, the median house price here was about $80,000 less than it is now. We're up to $268,000 for a median price.
Are you kidding me?
Which may, to some of our listeners who are not in Montana, that doesn't necessarily seem unreasonable, right? But when the median wages in the average median family income is $45,000, it creates sort of a disequilibrium in lifestyle. I mean, in order to afford a $270,000 home, you should earn about $80,000 in family income. So it leaves a lot of people in Missoula out of the ability to
purchase a house.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. How does the rental market look?
Rental market is strong as well, and it keeps going up. And,
okay.
73%, I like statistics.
Yeah, I know.
73% of Missoula families pay more than 30% of their income towards housing, and that's a lot.
Okay, that is a lot.
The consequences of all of this really make it tough for the average wage earner, to buy a house, even though there's a lot of, house sales and a lot of transactions going on around the United States. In 2016, the year we just ended, there were more than 6 million homes sold in the United States, of which about 600,000 were new homes, and the rest were resales of existing homes.
Sure, okay.
And I thought some of this, given the fact that the show is, what do you know?
Right.
I was looking at some of the real estate data, and I was surprised. I didn't have any idea. You may, our listeners may, but I thought some of this data to me was pretty surprising. For example, the typical home purchased last year was 1,900 square feet. This is in the whole United States.
Okay.
It was built in 1991.
Okay.
Had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and 90% of it was financed. So people, basically put down as little as possible. And, the age of the home is older than I thought it would be, actually. 88% bought through real estate agents, but 51% of them found their home on the internet, which was surprising to me.
So they found the initial property and then they
over half of the transactions, the house was already found on the internet, and then they contacted...
By the end client or by the realtor?
No, was found by the client.
By the client.
By you looking at, Zillow or Trula or whatever you look at.
Right.
And I thought that was a surprising number. The amount of square footage and it has been growing, but still 1,900 square feet to me doesn't seem like a very large house when you think about it.
Right.
But and of the 115 million homes that are occupied in this country.
Yep.
Yeah, most of the typical home was built in 1976. I wouldn't have known that.
My parents' first place.
Yeah. Well, the typical renter-occupied home was built even earlier, like 1973. Right. The typical home, not the new home, but the typical home people live in America, Typical American home is 1,500 square feet. Typical homeowner is 55 years old and has been living where they're living for 14 years. All that to me seems to be, very interesting.
As you're sitting there and talking about this, I'm thinking to myself, some of it seems odd, but think about in a developing country or in a third world, this is Shangri-La.
Yeah, I know that.
This is Shangri-La.
Well, in Moscow, when I was doing work in Moscow, a typical home for four was 400 square feet, and four families shared a kitchen.
That's the reality of the world.
Yeah, I mean but here
we're still the wealthiest nation in the world.
But it still seems odd that the average home is 1976. That's a long time ago. 62% of families owned their primary residence, which means 35 were renters. 35% of all the people in the country are renters. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was
and in Missoula, it's a higher number of home occupiers. They're 50%.
Yeah,
right?
We have a lot of the smaller homes. Okay. The other interesting statistic demographic is about realtors, and we're going to have one come in here today. But the typical realtor in America is 53-year-old white female. And 62% of all realtors are women, and the median age is 58.
That makes sense.
Doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. When you watch the real estate ads and the commercials and all of that, it doesn't. That is not necessarily the image that
I'm thinking
see.
Back east now, but yes,
right.
I understand it.
So there's a lot going on, and again, these statistics are all interesting, and I love them, as I share with you. Except in politics, I don't like statistics in politics.
I hope that our guest, Don Maddux, is going to get into the statistical weeds with us and give us some insight.
Well, I want to know about those things. I also want to know about her most exciting real estate venture. She has a $39 million property house, not a ranch. Sometimes you got millions of acres.
Right.
This is a $39 million house on 24 acres with 22,000 square feet of living space that took 10 years to build out. It was on the market for $78 million. Now it's a fire sale. It's half price. And it was a property that's built on Shelter Island up on Flathead Lake here in Montana. And it was built and it currently is owned by the California reclusive real estate mogul Don Abbey. And I understand that she can verify this, that she is being sold for less than he has in it at $39 million.
Well, let's bring her in. Our guest is Don Maddux. You are listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Back after this with Don Maddux from Glacier Sotheby International Realty. Okay, we are back, and you are listening to What Do You Know, presented by Don Maddux, Glacier Sotheby International.
And it just so happens Dawn is here with us today.
Really.
Dawn, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So we threw out a lot of statistics about Missoula and what's happening in the real estate market, and I want you to confirm, what I shared, which is our economy is in pretty good shape, and the real estate market here is strong and getting stronger. Is that true?
It is true. Yeah, it is true. We just ran numbers for you today because I thought you'd.
I love numbers today. I love numbers. Give me some numbers.
Well, here's the most interesting piece of our numbers. I have two really exciting things to tell you.
Okay.
This is one, and then the other one.
The winning lottery number is.
The next one. So from 2015, 2016, we just got all those totals done. And our market was up, and this is Missoula and Ravalli County.
Yes.
We are up 17%.
That's huge.
That is huge. I don't know if people
We're in the wrong
realize
business,
it.
Arnie. You're in the right business.
So get this, $94 million more this year
than last year?
Than the year before.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, not this year, I guess. 2016 was up
compared to
94
50.
million.
Overall gross spend.
Yep.
And is this and this is residential, right?
Residential.
Not only.
Yep.
Well, that's a lot.
Residential. Yep. And the average sales price went up from $261,823
right
to $289,960.
The average is $289 now?
Yes. No, sorry, $286.
Well, $286 is even bigger than the numbers that we saw.
You threw $268 out of this, so $286. And what's the size, square footage? Do you have any of that data?
No, but gosh, dang it.
But it's all right.
It's okay.
But we were talking that
that'll be good for the radio.
That 6 years ago, 2011. The median price was under 200. It was like 191 or 195.
Right.
So it's really gone up a lot.
That's right. Yep.
So what happens to the average working person in town? Where do they go and live?
So that's been, I think, something that obviously there's been a lot of news on that it's been, affordable housing is a little bit more of an issue. But I do think that we have some new things coming up and some developers that are kind of looking at those prices to kind of try to keep those reasonable.
Right.
So I think we'll see some things happen that way in 2017.
Well, because as you know, there's the old Sawmill District has condos and apartments,
Right.
and as part of the overall development, there is workforce housing, units that have
Yep.
gone in that area, and the city is concerned about that.
Yeah.
And what other things are happening around town that may alleviate that concern?
Well, there's probably some things that aren't confirmed yet
Okay.
but there definitely are some things coming that I think will
So
make
developments that will be
developments that'll
targeted
be
at-
more affordable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is, so the high sales price for 2015 was $1,650,000. Compared to the highest sales price in 2016 was 3.15. So where we see the big difference is in the higher end, which
Sure.
yay for me.
Yeah.
But that's where we're definitely seeing some changes.
So of the volume that you do, houses that you sell on the annual, so how much are in that sub, in the harder to find housing, which is that $250,000 range
Or lower?
or
Yep.
lower?
Yep, we do plenty of that in our brokerage.
I was going to say
I
you do.
personally don't do as much. I
Right.
kind of
Right.
focus more on the higher end, but definitely we do. That's a need.
Your
That's a
office
need.
stuff.
I mean, you
Yes,
have to
absolutely.
have. I mean, with a median family income of in the 40s in Missoula, it's hard to afford a $400,000 house.
It
A
is.
lot of your disposable income is going to be tied up in mortgage payments and interest and utilities and all that sort of thing. What's the rental market like here?
The
Then
rental market is strong. And I think it's probably even stronger right now, just because we're missing that kind of affordable housing
Right.
price range. But there's still I have a great house listed right now. That just lowered to $254,000, and that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's very nice. So I mean, there still are
neighborhood
some
is that in?
options out there. Out in Pleasant View.
Okay.
so when you get thrown out, you can move in there, and it'll be
Yeah.
perfect for you.
I'm going to be thrown out. But how about multifamily houses?
Multifamily right now I'm actually closing this week myself on a duplex, and those are going off the market as fast as they're.
A standalone duplex?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Where do you find that inventory? We're having a personal.
You're getting free real estate consultation on the air.
I am okay with that.
I know you are, but
Dawn sold me my house. Or
Yeah.
no, yeah, she did. I
was
she
the listing agent.
Listing agent.
Yep. For your
Arnie.
house, yeah.
Hold on. So there is inventory like that. Not a lot of it.
It goes
right?
quickly.
and is this being replicated in other Montana cities?
I
Is it
don't know. I actually think Bozeman right now is
It's
probably
probably
a little
hot.
bit more. Yeah, is even busier than we are. But I think that it kind of goes. As far as I know, Missoula and the Bitterroot are kind of my main areas.
Yeah.
So do you want to? I have the other news that I have to tell
Yeah,
you
tell me the other news.
that I'm super excited about.
Wait a
Speaking
minute,
of
is this a
affordable,
drum roll news.
yeah,
What
it is.
kind-
Do you have one?
We don't have. Well, we do.
Okay.
We'll sweeten it up afterwards.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Speaking of affordable housing, Montana's Shelter Island, I got a $10 million reduction on that today.
We were just talking about that before you walked. So it's gone now, as I recall, over the past several years, from 78
Yep.
to like 51, right, or something like that.
Yeah, maybe, and then a 44.
44, then 39.
Now it's 29.
29. It's a steal at
Right?
29. You should be up there right now.
You can't
29
afford
million.
not to buy that.
Out.
24 acres, 22,000
How much does it
square
cost
foot
to
of
run?
living space. You can't afford not to buy it.
Right? That's what I said.
It's less than they have in it, right? Much less than they
much
have in
less
it.
than they have in it.
So tell our
amazing.
listeners a
Tell
little
us
bit
about
about the
that.
Shelter Island property. Because, people who have gone up to Flathead Lake have driven by it. Some of them have been on boats, have gone around it.
Yeah.
And it's very kind of mysterious. It looks like a castle on an island. But tell us a little about this, because it's a very unique, it's one of a kind property.
And start
Yeah.
with the story about how you got it, because that's interesting too. So start from the beginning.
The story about how I got it, I was actually out at the Ranch Club, and we were meeting with buyers about
Okay.
buying lots in Phase 6, buying lots to build new homes there. And I got a text message that said, I left you a voicemail and sent you an email. I'm trying to reach you about a property that we have, in the Flathead Valley.
Right.
And I said, I'm tied up right now, but can I call you back?
Yeah, go back. I'm busy now.
Yeah, I'm kind of busy.
Looking at
and
lots.
So then the next morning I called them back, and so that's kind of how it.
And how did they get your name?
They found me on the internet.
So interesting. So
We said that 51% of the power of the internet, and I mean that's really changed real estate business. I said 51% of all people who have bought houses found their house even before they found their real estate agent. They're looking at Zillow or they're looking at Realtor.com.
And I don't know where you got that statistic, but you might be dated. I actually think like our most recent stuff said 60, and I think it's even higher than that. Well, absolutely.
You know, as these websites get much more interactive. And give you can drill down to how many pets are allowed and all that kind of thing.
Well, let's ask the question: how many of when you're taking prospective clients out to see homes, how many of them have their devices with them, whether it be an iPad or a smartphone that they're consulting as they're looking through it, either grabbing content and grabbing taking pictures of the property or looking things up and they're so well equipped.
Right. Even just GPS, so that we know where we're going.
To get you
oftentimes,
there. I mean, you can go, as we all know, you can go on one of the search engines, like Zillow, and you could, if you say, I don't even know if I want to live in California, but I want a property on the West Coast. You can actually look at every single house for sale from Washington State all the way down to the Mexican border, and not only know what the house looks like, the square footage, you can know the tax, what it's been sold for in the past, what the properties around is. This is Carfax for buying homes.
Or actually Zillow, just to be honest, with Zillow you can even find properties that aren't for sale anymore and haven't been for a long time. They're not very accurate, not for our
I was going to say,
market.
how accurate is that information?
Not very. Not
really.
Not Zillow, nope.
No.
Yeah, so, but I mean, they're the most popular website for sure for real estate, but they often don't.
Well, because Trulia and Zillow are like merged now, aren't they? They're one.
Yep.
Well, is that right?
Yeah, it's almost like Expedia and Orbitz. I mean, they're like it's one big company.
What I think is interesting, though, is that they gather the information of the house that had been when the last sale was, and then that property is available on Zillow, but it doesn't tell you like last purchased for this price.
Well, but what it is useful is if you don't know if you're looking like your second home, right? And you want to know, so I don't know what the taxes are like in Palm Desert, right? Or I don't know what you can get a rough idea or a pretty good idea of what you're up against.
Yeah, and I think they do show taxes. We're a non-disclosure state, so they can't show
here, but they show another where it isn't. They show it. Yeah.
All right, so the exciting thing about what's going on in the Flathead is the $10 million.
We're talking about millions.
$10 million reduction.
Millions and billions.
Is that your only property up there? Do you have other properties up there that you're a listing agent
Yep,
for?
I have other properties up there.
But we're going to get back. I want to get back. Tell me about this property. I'm interested.
I think
I'm
going to take you guys there. You should come there. Not now.
No, we can't.
It would be really cold.
You can't get. You could walk there now. No, Flathead Lake is frozen.
I don't think it freezes all the way. We could get a barge, but it would be way more fun to have you come in the summer. But if I haven't sold it at that price, it'll probably be gone. But it is amazing. I mean, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's just true.
And you've seen a lot of stuff, right?
I have some really beautiful listings. It's just unique. Everything that he picked and the finishes that are in it are just, you don't see them here. For sure, you don't see them in Montana. So it's, it doesn't have the rustic kind of feel that most Montana properties do. It's all there's not hardwood. It's all tile, and everything is gargantuan. Like I think
you feel like you're a little munchkin living there.
The property manager said that when they were, they had all the contractors out there, they could fit 15 guys in the fireplace.
Wow!
So the fireplace is as big as this room. I mean,
is that right?
Yes,
that's unbelievable.
A lot of wood.
I wouldn't lie to you about that.
No,
I really wouldn't.
You're a reputable realtor.
That's exactly right.
Realtor.
It's this high. I mean, you know what I mean? It's huge.
Well, I've seen
everything
as I've gone around there with binoculars. I mean, it looks like some of the other buildings like the garage, are mansions almost in and of themselves.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that you could live there perfectly happy the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Let me switch gears. So, what's going on in Phase 6 down at the Ranch Club?
That we just closed last week on 2 more lots, and we have another one under contract.
So there's a lot of activity. When I go there and play golf, all the time there's a new house being built out there.
Yeah. We're almost halfway done with Phase 6. So
is that right?
Yeah.
So how many? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh. No, I just said it's exciting. Yeah. No.
Well, how many properties do they have down there that are either in development that are finished? At the Ranch Club, right?
Total in the total Ranch Club. I don't even know the answer to that.
But it's a nice mixed use, development, and the Phase 6 is the one going out along the course, right?
Right.
So they're really nice properties.
Yeah.
Is there a size restriction in terms of how big
There is one huge one down there
It is
on the 10th on the 10th or 11th
looks like a
hole.
clubhouse.
Yeah.
That big.
That's
I think
a big
there's
house.
a size minimum. I don't know that there's a restriction. It would have to do more
Really?
with your lot. Yeah,
Have you done stuff down at the stock farm? I'm just.
I have. Yeah.
And what's going on down in the stock farm?
We were having some activity there as well. Yeah.
You know, and that's more upscale than the Ranch Club.
No, I know. What's going on down there?
I have several listings there, and they have a couple different options. They have cabins that you can purchase, so you can purchase one and live there all the time if you want, or you can put it in the rental pool.
Okay.
Right.
And they rent those out on a regular basis for different events. So they just kind of changed the guidelines for that. They're a lot more owner friendly now for the cabin rentals. And then there's private residences there too, and they really are beautiful. That's a really special place.
Yes, it is.
What's the average size of the cabin?
I think I'm going to say they're roughly 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And they start these days. What, $1 million up?
No, I have one that's under.
Under
Yeah.
one under $1 million.
Yeah.
And what are the amenities?
And
that
this is
come-
Montana. That's so funny hearing. You know, like they're doing this new phase.
Yeah.
They're doing a new phase at Yellowstone Club down in Big Sky condos, and they
Right.
start at $3 million.
Isn't that crazy?
You know, and we're talking about the average wage in Montana of $40,000 a year, and they're building $3 million condos here,
So-
and people are buying them,
Yeah.
but
they
not
are.
mostly Montana.
Yeah, mostly out of state. That's
Right.
where we see a lot of the high end stuff is out of state buyers.
Is there something? Is there a trend in that's good or bad? And from your perspective of
Well, from my
of-
perspective, it's good because, well, that's what I mostly sell for one.
Right.
But also they bring money into our economy. I mean, if you look
Right.
at the Bitterroot, for example, like the Darby area with, I have listings along the West Fork that are amazing. And the buyers that I have looking at those, they'll bring money into our economy.
Well, what happens occasionally that I've seen over the years is somebody will come in here as it'll be a second or third or fourth home,
Exactly.
and then they'll be spending more time here. Then they'll get tired of living in California or Seattle because of the
Right.
hassle. Then they'll be here almost permanently, and they think they're retired or semi-retired, and then they get bored, and then they start businesses.
Yep.
They start doing
businesses.
stuff.
They eat at restaurants. They buy gas.
I mean, the
they,
stock farm is a
they do
perfect
all those
example.
things.
Charles
Yeah.
Schwab, is
Right.
down here bored. Let's open a golf course and
Yeah.
let's create a real estate development.
Yeah. And how
So it's
about
good
how
for
about
the
an
economy.
equestrian
You know,
park?
yeah. I mean, hopefully, a lot of entrepreneurial activity and means entrepreneurs are here, and the way you get them here is give them, a place to live that they feel comfortable
Right.
with,
Right.
and they create stuff because they're not going to, retirement is an old concept. Nobody really retires. All these folks are always got their fingers in activities and
Right.
business ventures and helping startups and doing boot
Yeah.
camps for entrepreneurs. I mean,
They do
can't sit there.
consulting. They often do. I find a lot of my retired clients have consulting businesses
Sure.
where whatever they did, because they obviously did it well, then they end up consulting.
Well, you also find out, this, and I know this from doing some work related to Yellowstone Club. There are a lot of world-renowned business and philanthropic leaders that spend a lot of time in Montana
Right.
quietly.
Right.
mean,
I think that's one of the cool things about Montana that I tell
Right.
that I tell clients moving in is that I think we kind of mind our own business, and although we might be impressed by someone that's a movie star or whatever, I don't think we bother them. We kind of leave them alone.
It's like
Plus-
New York.
Yeah. Plus, we're such a huge state. Like you can kind of hide out, and not everybody knows.
Right. I mean, like nobody goes and tries to track David Letterman down when
Right.
he's here,
Right.
when he's living in his place.
Yeah, and like I have a producer is actually looking at the island right now, and that's one of the things I told him. Like I actually feel like in Lakeside, most people probably wouldn't even know who you are.
Right, and they're not going to.
so-
And if they do, they're not going to care.
They're not going to care. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So let me ask you this: when you got into this business, I don't know how many years ago, did you think that you'd be doing this type of real estate?
2010 is when I got
2010.
What'd you do before that?
Yeah. What did you do before that?
I want the backstory
Marketing.
here.
Marketing and media.
Yep.
Did you ever? But when you set out to do hang your own shingle in real estate, was it to do higher end properties, or was it just to be in the game, and then you kind of moved into that direction where
Yeah.
you saw trends happening?
So I think originally I think I always knew I would get into real estate. I just didn't ever have time because I was busy with kids and the marketing company. And then when the market crashed and everybody was bailing out, I thought, well, what a great time to get in.
Right.
And take my time to learn it. And I felt like maybe I could offer something a little bit different than everybody else was doing just in terms of the marketing angle. So that's kind of what I
So how
went
big
for.
is your operation? How big is your office? How many people?
So we are at 12 right now, 12 agents. And
That's
in Missoula, just in the Missoula Bitterroot
So in
office.
2010, did you think that's where you'd be now?
No. Well, yeah, no, not really.
Did you have a vision for it to be kind of in that space, or you're just like, look, I'm going to get into it, I'm going to learn it. I'm coming in at the time when it's kind of depressed, so I can take my time learning, as you said. But did you think like, hey, you knew branding, you knew
I knew
marketing,
branding, yep, and that's what I was going for. So I started at Windermere, which was an awesome brokerage. I mean,
Right.
I can't say enough good things about the Middies and John Brower. I mean, they're really amazing there. And then I really wanted to be downtown, so I bought the building.
Why downtown?
I just felt like that would be a good place to be, where you're just, I have
Particularly for
clients.
out-of-state people.
Yeah, and
They
I
come
have people
downtown
walking by every day that are clients, that I know from something,
Right.
clients from doing something. It's just a kind of a hub. So I really wanted to be downtown. So during all of that kind of time, then Glacier Sotheby's out of Whitefish had reached out to me to see if I would be interested in working for them. And I kind of thought I could be an agent for them, or I could build my own brokerage and then sell it to them. So that's what I did.
And that's a venerable, prestigious brand to be associated
Sure.
with in the real estate.
It is, yeah.
Business.
I mean, the best in the world. I looked at a lot of things.
Sure.
Right.
Tell us.
And when that came out, when it kind of got out that I was thinking I would sell Maddux Real Estate Group, Christie's out of New York called, not the local office, but out of New York called, and Keller Williams, of course, has always been trying to get, into this market, and they just didn't. I
Right.
just had my
Berkshire
sights set.
Hathaway,
Yeah.
another, that national
Yep.
name with some bells and whistles.
Right.
Sotheby's,
Right.
though, is a different kind of vibe to it. Right?
Yeah,
I'm
I think
back
so.
east, so I know what Sotheby's represents. As do you.
Well, you're a snob, anyway.
I'm not. No, but I mean,
It's just so clean and traditional, and
Yeah.
like I have access to all of the people over the last 100 years that have been that are associated with the auction house. So
Right.
anyone that's ever purchased anything or
Right.
registered to purchase anything or sold anything through the auction house, like there's how else do you reach people of that net worth? Like there's not, So,
Do you find that people, even local people with houses that you would not necessarily think Glacier Sotheby's want to list with you because they like that prestige?
I think that if anything, maybe more normal houses are a little bit afraid that they're not Sotheby's, worthy,
right?
and that is absolutely not true. I mean, we take
was gonna
things
say.
in every price range.
Yeah.
I mean, that's with
That is not a stigma, but that is something that people might think.
They might
that
think
you're
that.
just the
Right.
upper end of the.
right, but we
Price.
treat every listing,
So let me
like the
ask you
next
this.
Can I
one,
make
so-
one point about
Sure,
that,
you-
Arnie?
Yeah.
When we were living back east, and there was a real estate agent in the town that we were from, Summit, New Jersey. This woman, her name was Lois Schneider. She was the shingle. She was the one that you saw in every house in town, and she was prestigious. She handled all the beautiful houses.
Right.
We had a small starter 3-bedroom. We listed with her, and we listed with her because we weren't concerned so much about being kind of like, oh, that's too big of a brand for us. We knew that they were going to get a lot of throughput. They were going to get a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people walking through
Right.
that house because of the value of that brand.
Right.
So the more people think that way and understand that, the more valuable it is.
Yeah, and I
Who
think
you're listing agent.
I mean, I have 2 examples next week of buyers coming in that are looking at houses with me. And like I've had people say, well, you have so many listings. Aren't you worried how do you pay attention to all of them?
Right.
For one, we have a great staff. We really have a great support staff for one. But also what happens is they'll go on the webpage. So then they end up in my listings. And next week I'm showing, 10 houses, and of those 8 are mine. So I mean,
That's great. That
is great.
So they're landing there and they're seeing. So you just have the ability then, and we'll just use the island again as an example, or Bearmouth Legacy Ranch. That's an amazing,
Right.
that it's 8,200 acres with an amazing lodge. I mean, that's incredible. So people might go there and they might not even be able to afford that, but because they go just to check that out, then they start scrolling down and say, well, this was one that I could afford, or here's another one.
sure.
So I just end up with a lot of activity.
So tell me this, Dawn. Is there a difference between a Montanan or someone who's already lived here who's buying up or down and a newbie to Montana coming in terms of what they're looking for, what they want? I mean, can you discern a difference in terms of the kind of property they're interested in?
Well, I think that their reaction to the state is just different. I mean, because you live
Right.
here, obviously, then you can appreciate it and you already know what to expect. I think one of the things that I enjoy is when people will come in from out of state, they're just so impressed with how magnificent this state is. I sold a place on Sunny Slope up on Flathead Lake, not last year, but the year prior. And I mean, they've become friends of ours from Texas, and they're just in awe constantly. And just like you said, they're here more and more. You know,
Sure.
they're here right now, actually. Like, they just keep coming back. So I think that the reaction, if that answers your question, the reaction from people coming
Right, and
from out of state is
in
just
terms of
amazing.
amenities and stuff, do they want different things than the typical people here want, or is it?
No, I think they want the same things. I think the difference is they're just not used to that. You know, that's why they're coming here, is because they want space and they want privacy. And,
Right.
You know,
but what about
so-
in terms of internal stuff? I mean, do they all want, fireplaces? Do they want, I mean, when I first came here, I was used to East Coast or
Right.
big city real estate.
Right.
And when I looked into what was available, it was a lot different than I was used to. Of course, it was a lot less expensive than I was used to
Right.
as well. I'm just wondering now. In
Do you mean in terms of
2017
finishes? Like,
Yeah,
what,
somebody comes in from
fireplaces
California.
and hardwood floors?
They come in here. Do
Yeah.
they think this is a little bit primitive? We're not as sophisticated. Our stuff is not as
No.
quality. No, they don't think that at all.
No, I don't think so. At
that's
least they
good.
don't, not the things that I'm showing them. They don't say that. I think sometimes they're surprised at how expensive we are compared to, they maybe thought that we were such a little,
Little out of the way place.
we might not
That's
be.
the beauty of this place. Everyone.
Well, there is parts of the state that's that way.
Yeah.
If you want to go live in, Helena or someplace like that, you can find a different kind of property
Right.
there.
And a different price point.
And a different price point than we have in Missoula. Missoula has a fairly high price point for
It
the
does.
kind of community it is. Many university communities around the country are not as competitively priced as we are. I have relatives and friends who lived in Oxford, Ohio, where
Mm-hmm.
Miami of Ohio is. They have 18,000 students, and a typical house there, you would get a lot more there than you would get.
Oh,
here.
really?
Yeah.
Not as much space, but a bigger house.
No, you wouldn't get in Missoula you don't get as much space really. I mean, you can buy ranches on the outside, but within Missoula proper, it's very similar in terms.
Really?
Yeah, and the prices are 50 or 100,000.
But we're higher here.
We're higher here.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick ID. You're listening to What Do You Know with Scott and Arnie. Our guest is Dawn Maddux from Glacier Sotheby's International Realty.
And I
Thank
think,
you.
Yes.
Perfect. Yay.
Perfect. Well, I think
Not a sponsor, but hello. It's the beginning of the new year.
yes, and we have Dawn here
I wanna
talking
know
about
what
an
else-
important issue.
Right, and I want to know what else is going on in the market, numbers-wise and statistics-wise, because you're a statistics geek, Arnie. You said that.
I said except for politics.
Except for politics.
My favorite political line, we're going to throw something else in here, was Winston Churchill, who said politicians use statistics like drunks use lampposts, more for support than illumination. So outside, and this election cycle is a good example of that.
Oh, boy.
So, but in the realty area, statistics are very important because then you have a gauge
Yeah.
of what people are not only here are buying, but what around the country
Right.
is going on. And as you have people moving all around. The other thing I think besides statistics, I have to say I've become a junkie of the of House and Garden Network and watching Fixer Upper and Flip and Flop and all those kinds of shows. And I think you get very creative ideas about what you can do. So do you have folks that come in and want to look at a property that they can then, embellish and customize and fix up?
Sometimes you might be more creative than most.
Yeah.
Honestly, people have a hard time even imagining a room in a different color.
Right.
They that's why we tell people, like, if you have a bright purple
Right.
room, you might want to paint that before you list it, because it's really hard for people to kind of
Well,
imagine what they want.
You've watched Fixer Upper?
Yeah, I love those shows.
I mean, yeah. So you watch Chip and and his wife, right, Joe.
Yep.
Chip and Joe, and they're in Waco.
Yeah.
And every house has shiplap, which I'd never heard of until I saw the show. And she always, no matter what the house is, she's going to tear all the walls out and open it up. Right. That's what. But what I found on that show very interesting in Waco, Texas, which is a college town, Baylor University.
Yep.
They have a lot of properties that are under $100,000
Yeah.
for sale, and they, you throw $75,000 down there into a home, and you get a pretty, nice small customized house.
Yeah,
Well, you
I don't. We don't really have that market here.
No,
anymore.
what?
I think
Yeah.
that it's all. And the minute they do come out, they get snapped up.
Well, let me ask you this. So how important is staging a home?
Really important.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's the same concept. If people can't even imagine what a room would look like in a different color, they certainly can't really imagine their furniture there. So I think there's kind of a fine line with staging that you don't want to go too far, because if it appears cluttered, then of course everything seems smaller. But if you just lightly stage, someone needs to start a really good staging company here. I feel.
Yeah,
like
well, I
really
noticed on
are.
these shows in California, they spend $3,000 to stage a house.
Yeah.
And they get more than that, way more than that back when you can get a visualization.
Sure.
I would suspect that in a number of those houses, people want to buy the furniture that the house has been staged with.
Many of my listings actually are turnkey, so people sell them fully furnished because it's their
Is that
third or
right?
fourth house, so they don't need, they sell
And that's
it.
great because you can't,
makes it easy for people.
Well, they're coming here. They may not be here full time, or even if they are, they don't know where to buy furniture. They don't know
Right.
if their stuff fits from where they're moving it. It'd be nice just, and internationally, by the way, lots and lots of properties. It's more commonplace to buy a home fully furnished than it is to buy it empty.
What are some of the features and accoutrements that people are looking for in buying a new home? Like, so is kitchen, bathrooms, like what are the most important elements?
Kitchens and bathrooms are the biggest ones.
Technology, like
Technology is something that you can add, so I don't know that that's as,
Okay.
that's maybe not quite as important.
Okay.
I think, the location, of course, is the most important thing because you can even remodel a house and change that, but it needs to be in a location.
Right,
that's
location,
desirable.
location has
that
been the
is
old
always
rule
true.
of real estate.
Yep.
it's
Right.
not a good location, then exit out. And then if you find the right location, a nice kitchen, great room.
Yep, kitchen. Great. Everybody's really into that open concept right now. I know we are. Your house is definitely that way.
Right.
Where because everybody ends up in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
For anything you
Gathering
do.
area.
Yep. So if your kitchen's open, everybody really loves
Right.
that, of course. And some of the older houses, like in the University District, those are very compartmentalized
Yeah.
rooms.
Well, that's the way they built in those
Yeah.
that day, right? Everybody
Yeah.
was a separate little room.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is, location is a variable based on, your family, because in some cases, location means a good school district.
Right. Right.
If you have school, if you don't have school-age
point.
kids, then you want maybe something else that,
Or work. How close
or
it is
close to
your
the
work
office.
and-
I mean, those
yeah.
are
View and
or
land.
school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have a view, land,
Yeah.
water,
Water.
sheep. The important things.
And
that
you
need.
guys live in the same.
Yeah, we live up.
Yeah.
in
So you have beautiful views.
Yeah, we
Well, hey, they just sold 2 of our things.
Guess who's
Are they your clients?
have you sold lately? Have you sold lately up in Circle H Ranch?
Well, she's selling the new listings,
Lots.
not the reselling.
Right,
Right.
I know. Right.
Nope, I haven't sold any house. Well, I did sell silver tips.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Sold that, and then this within the last 3 days, I've turned in 3 offers on some of the parcels.
On some-
Is that what you mean, the lots?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I had 2 parcels, so whatever. We don't need to talk about that.
That's your own personal view issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about land in terms of, do people think about how they're going to use the land adjacent to their home? Like, when I was looking here, there aren't a lot of like outdoor, there's no pools. There's no, in-ground pools here.
Well, if there were pools, there'd be ice skating rinks. So
Right.
that would-
But
Right.
why is that though? Like pools, this is a beautiful summer here. I
You
guess
only
people
get
just-
3 or 4 months, though. Here's my
Is that
thought.
right?
Todd would love to put in a pool. That's something he's always talked about.
Right.
So I think, well, first of all, we belong to the Ranch Club, so we can go use that amazing pool.
Right,
That's the
right.
That's
coolest
that whole.
pool ever.
I'm a member.
Yeah,
there, and that's
it's
fantastic
beautiful.
stuff.
And then also we go to the lake, and I feel like a ton of people go to the lake. So what's really the point of a pool
Right.
if you spend the whole
Hot tubs
summer
are different.
somewhere
Though. People like hot tubs. I have
Yeah.
one right outside my
You
bathroom.
can get that added. That's
You
like-
can
Yeah,
add
it's later
that.
on.
Yeah, you can add that.
How about are there any, I think where we are, infrastructure services that are not necessarily up to not up to code, but up to like the high
Internet.
Yeah, internet, and like there's certain things that we don't have access to because we're so far off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, we're really not that far off the grid. That
Well, not all of Missoula has the latest high
Right.
speed access.
I do find with buyers coming in, those things are important. I get a lot of
Very
people that can work remotely.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Well,
just-
the workforce is so changing in the
Right.
United States that
Right.
probably in my lifetime, by the time I expire, probably half the American workforce will be working out of their homes at
Right.
some time or another.
yeah,
You know,
and that's exciting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, one of the things that was noticed as we're building out in the old sawmill district, first couple of buildings were 1 and 2 bedrooms, but now all of the people, we're building 2 more, the C and D, they want 2 bedrooms and an office. Even for retirees, they want to have an office in their home
Right.
because there really is no such thing as retirement anymore. People have
You keep on
part-time
saying
jobs.
that.
There isn't.
I guess that's good. He's not thinking about that anytime soon.
No.
He's always.
I'm going to become an Uber driver just because.
I would rather work at Costco. Yeah,
Really, than be an Uber driver?
you just scan and like you're
In a
gone.
car, you got somebody.
You get those great discounts too.
Exactly.
Hey, but you got somebody closed in the car. You can run your comic routines with them. There you got a captive audience. Fantastic. You clock in when you want. You clock
Hit in
out
the
when you
head.
want. We had the regional manager for Uber on the show earlier this year, late last year.
Yeah.
And it was interesting about the average driver. So Missoula, majority of the Uber drivers are women, if you can believe it.
Really?
Middle aged, whatever that means anymore, but older, not college age, women are doing it.
Right.
Let's switch gears for a half a second in the remainder of this segment to the commercial and residential. What's going commercial and retail? What's going on in town? Trend wise that you see there.
Downtown?
Just in general in Missoula.
Yeah. Well, it's that's kind of a mixed bag. I think so much of that depends on kind of where you're at.
So talk about downtown for
Downtown is really popular. That's done really well. And I hope that that continues. That'll be great. So there's a few things for sale right now.
The one issue with the old Missoula Mercantile finally nailed down. That's gonna,
if that ever ends.
If that ever ends, which I think it will, and you're going to have a new hotel property down there, and that's going to drive a lot more commercial activity downtown, and that's a good thing.
I think that's a good thing. That would be good.
How about at Southgate?
Well, that's going through a whole renovation, right?
Yes, it is.
It's crazy out there. They have food court, and they're going to have new stores and
movie theaters.
One of those big upscale, tiered movie theaters that serve food, and whatever the big cities have, we're having one of those movie theaters.
What's interesting about that is that where the trend is that malls are shutting down left, right, and center around the United States. This is a great market for a mall because it pulls from such a wide range, right? An area of population.
Well, our age demographic here in Montana is not as nimble in online purchasing, as maybe some other areas in an urban area. And secondly, I think they're sort of gathering places when people live so far apart.
Right.
So that's why there's
destination.
Like downtown is destination, and the mall. Those are really the two destinations.
Right. You know what else we need? Those restaurants that they do the shows, like the medieval shows, and everybody eats with their hands.
Oh yeah, they used to have that.
We need one of those.
Times.
Yeah, we need a medieval times.
You can have your Uncle Ralph movie, or doesn't he do one of those every weekend?
They're in Secaucus, New Jersey. But they're also in Denver. Well, you need a Dave and Buster's here. The problem is you don't have the population for it. Dave and Buster's, right?
Yeah, but our service draw area, our maximum service draw area is about 250,000. And then we move down into the metro. It's 125. That's enough for David.
The fact that they're putting an IMAX here is impressive.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think that's good things for our youth to do.
There's not enough for them for sure.
For them to do.
What are you hearing from some of your out of state clients? What would they be asking? What questions do they ask about what's
it like living here? What do they want to know if they have?
Gosh, I don't really know that they ask that. I think their biggest thing is I sold a couple properties this year, high end, one moving from California and one moving from Pennsylvania. And they both were, again, they're both kind of semi-retired doing the consulting thing.
Right.
And I think they're just looking for peace and quiet. And they both bought places. One has a huge pond. The other one is right on the river. And his boys like to fish. I think it's the lifestyle. People move here for the lifestyle.
But also they like some amenities, right?
Yeah.
I remember when some of your relatives came back here from New Jersey, one of the things they said to me quietly when you weren't around was, there's nothing to do here. From a New Jersey perspective, that's
going to be further from the truth.
No, but there's a lot to do. It's
a whole different thing.
A whole different thing.
You know what's amazing about that, and then we'll go to our next segment, is that when they come out here, the first question they said to me when I moved out here was, where are you going to buy a mattress? They had no idea that
we have more mattress stores than we have restaurants.
What kind of question is that? Because I think when you think of Montana and you're from out of state, you think of the plain. You think of like the valley. You think of like being hidden away somewhere.
Well, my favorite
line. You think everyone's still driving horses?
Before we go to the break, I got to tell you one of my favorite lines. So I was down at the stock farm, and I was sucking up to somebody who let me go there and play golf, and I was sitting in the veranda of the the restaurant, and there were a couple of groups around us, and they're wearing their Ralph Lauren cowboy duds. They just probably flown in from New York.
Yeah, they just ordered from.
Yeah,
and they just bought it Neiman Marcus.
And you'll appreciate this. One of them said to the other one, assuming we were all alike because we're all sitting on the veranda, I love coming to Montana. All the villagers are so friendly.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah, and everything here is so cheap. That was exactly what they thought, and that's
villagers. I love that.
The villagers, they were some African country they were coming to.
let's go. Let's break right now for a spot, and then we'll be right back with our final segment with Dawn Maddux.
And a chocolate. We can have a chocolate.
Oh, and chocolate too.
Yeah.
Glacier Sotheby International Realty. It's not bees, right? It's bees.
It is bees.
It is.
Possibly,
Yeah,
yes.
Sotheby.
Glacier Sotheby's International Realty.
That's very good.
Okay, we are back. Funny, Arnie. You were just singing.
No, I'm trying not to sing. I'm breaking the habit. Dawn, let me ask you this. How competitive is the real estate business? It seems that every housewife, part-time worker, people who can't find a job anywhere else think they can be real estate agents.
Lately,
What's the market look like in terms of, is it cluttered? Do we have an excess of agents? Is there enough properties to go around? Is it like a beehive swarming with full and part-time folks?
So I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yes.
What I would say is that I think so when I got in like 2010, I want to say there were maybe 400 people in our local MLS.
Really, our local MLS? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not that big. We're 125,000 people. We have
Right.
400 realtors.
And that's at the bottom of the market. That is more than doubled at this point.
So there's 800 people selling real estate?
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is I think that people don't it's not very hard to get your license, for one. It's not very hard to get, and you're really dealing with people's their
Right, the single largest purchase they're going to make in their life.
Purchase they're going to make, right? And it's also very personal. And if you're dealing in residential, it's very
Absolutely.
Well,
So
most of the people, I would conjecture that most people that buy a house are spending more money than they have.
usually, yep.
Right. So it is it's not only the largest purchase, it's going into debt more than they've ever gone into
Right.
debt before. They have a mortgage now.
Right. And so we're dealing with legal documents and, inspections and just so many things that could go wrong. And there's suddenly this influx of all these brand new people that don't know what they're doing. I mean, I was there once too, but I had a really good broker,
Right.
So
so
the
I learned a
400
lot.
that have come along in a few years, 5, 6. Why? Give me the why.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think when the market starts to rise, then of course, then people go, oh, this is something I could do. I do think that there's always that kind of misconception that, we make this percentage and so we get paid so much money. What people don't understand is what we pay in fees and what we pay in licensing and our splits to be with our brand. There's a lot of liability.
I saw the average real estate
insurance.
agent in the United States only makes $40,000 a year, full time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
The average, when you average it out.
I think actually, to your point, too many people out there doing real estate is dangerous because, especially people that are looking at real estate as an investment, because having somebody that's really astute in the market and what brings real value, you need someone that could really speak to that and be.
You need a professional.
Someone
You
to
do.
guide. So it's not just buying your personal home, but if you're buying it for investment purposes, I don't want someone telling me what they think it should, it will do. I want someone that knows.
You want facts. Yeah.
Yeah, you want facts. So
That's part of it. I think right now too, there's a couple of brokerages that do a lot of recruiting. And I think that, they just look for bodies. And I think that that's a mistake. And we're very particular about who we take. And they have to know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing, they sure better ask. So
Sure.
So I just think that it's just one of those things. I'm sure it cycles up and down. I started at the down, so I've never been on a bubble. But
Well, one of the good things that this points out is you can go use technology, internet, and check the credentials.
Right.
Check what they've like someone like yourself, what you've sold before, what your company represents.
Right.
And you can weed out part-timers or
Right.
people that are
Right.
not as
Hobbyists.
savvy. Hobbyist. I think that's a good word. A hobbyist real estate person.
well, look, we are at the end of our hour.
It goes so fast when you're eating
does go-
chocolate.
You
When
guys,
you're eating
thanks for
chocolate, it
having
goes
me.
so
This was
fast.
so fun. Thank you guys.
Did you enjoy yourself?
I did. It was fun.
Good.
Yeah.
We
We
appreciate
didn't want it to be like a doctor's visit.
it. With that, I will say I'll bid you a fond adieu. Have a good rest of your Sunday morning.
Yes.
I'll see you next week.
See you soon, Dawn.
Thank
You
you
take
guys.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290, 1015 FM, and newstalkkgvo.com.